Story 1. I cannot date someone who has the same name as my parents. Also, I have 4 Jennies in my family because my uncles share a similar type. Therefore, I would try to avoid adding another. Story 2. When individuals have no original thoughts and merely repeat what they hear, it indicates a lack of curiosity about the world in general. Story 3. When I become the center of their universe, they need hobbies and friendships. I cannot be their sole source of happiness. It is too big a burden. Story 4. I was getting to know a man who seemed too good to be true, which he was. I added him on the gaming platform after some time of getting to know him and saw all the inappropriate games. I could literally feel my interest in him vanish. I lost interest in him after that. Story 5. Apparently hating Weird Al is okay if he is not her cup of tea. But if she hates him, it is a clear sign we are not going to get along. Story 6. Lack of manners and insulting people who are different or trying something new is cringe and pathetic to be around. Story 7. Someone who constantly counters signals. I dated someone who would answer any question with the opposite of what they meant in a sarcastic voice. I clearly knew they were joking, but asking, "Hey, do you want a cookie?" and getting back, "No, why would I want a delicious treat?" was tiring. Story 8. If a partner does things to you that they would never tolerate being done to them, even if it is not a big deal to me, if it would be a big deal to them, I still know it is a person who allows themselves to treat you in a way they would never accept being treated. Story 9. If you chew your toenails and eat them, I walked in on my ex with his foot to his mouth, munching his toenails. I was impressed by his flexibility at 29 years old, but also disgusted at the same time. Story 10. I don't like men who treat their partner like one of their brothers. This often shows in playing pranks on each other or gross-out humor. I understand some people enjoy this dynamic, but I am not your brother. Story 11. 1. People who share custody of a pet with an ex-partner. People who mention infinite jest in the first 3 dates. Story 12. This is going to sound awful. Large moles on their face draw my attention and I cannot let it go. I had one partner who shaved the hairs that grew out, and when we kissed, the stubble would poke me. I had to end the relationship. Story 13. If they become visibly frustrated or irritated by minor inconveniences, it is worse if they cannot help but complain about them. Story 14. There is one specific person that I strongly dislike. If someone has him in their contacts, I avoid them. Story 15. I refuse to date another man who makes me watch Rick and Morty. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed some episodes, but I have met several men in a row who did not want to listen to my opinion when picking out what to watch, explained the jokes to me condescendingly, and got upset when I criticized the show. It just all happened to be Rick and Morty. So now the standard is, do you respect my opinions and can you compromise when choosing our entertainment? Story 16. Scared to disagree with me. Backs down when I disagree with them. I am not looking for an argument. In fact, I pretty much refuse to argue at all. If you need theatrics and yelling, you are not ready for the real deal. I am looking for someone who does not think they have to mold themselves into something they are not to trick me into liking them. Story 17. People who smoke cigarettes. I watched my father try to quit multiple times, get diagnosed with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and now he can barely function even with an oxygen tank. He hates what his life has become and is so angry at himself. I will not watch my partner destroy themselves in the same way. I do not care if they are literally perfect for me in every other way. Story 18. Polyamory and non-monogamy. I have experience with it, but it was always an unmitigated disaster. I am strictly monogamous and nothing will change that. I have no judgment for people who practice polyamory or non-monogamy. Different strokes for different folks. It just is not how I am wired and it is not what I want. Story 19. Someone who holds a grudge. I am happy for my partner to take their time processing things, but do not hold it in. Talk to me so we can discuss it and I can change or improve. Story 20. Not liking animals is a deal breaker. I have cats, dogs, and a bearded dragon. Fortunately, my husband does like animals. He likes them more than I do. Story 21. Not mine, but my fiancé's. One of his deal breakers is if the person cannot stand air conditioning or colder temperatures. He hates being hot. Story 22, more like a test, but if we do not travel well together, you find out a lot about a person when taking a trip. If you do not mesh well on a vacation, they are not your person for the long haul. Story 23. Spending many hours a day on social media or posting photos regularly is something I dislike. I am fine with most hobbies, but this is a major pet peeve of mine. Story 24. Sports fans. It is fine if you like to watch the occasional game, but obsessed people or anybody who makes their team part of their identity is insufferable. Story 25. Women who refuse to fully express themselves. I support you doing what you want, but if you do not get, for example, a piercing because, even though you want it, your parents would be disappointed you are a grown woman. Do what you want with your body. Story 26. If they are not overly kind to any service worker, such as restaurant staff, gas station attendants, or Uber drivers. Edit. People getting annoyed by this comment is telling. Story 27. People who just love to be contrarian for no valid reason. Even if they agree with you, they still want to play devil's advocate. Go away. Story 28. Being too needy. If I spend all my free time with you and it is still not enough, then find someone who does not have a life. Story 29. I cannot date someone who chews gum as a constant habit. Nothing turns me off more than watching and listening to someone chew all the time. Story 30. As a woman, whenever a man says, "I am a nice man," it is an immediate no. I do not need you to tell me that you are a nice man. I want you to show me that you have the potential to be a nice man and commit to it. Story 31. Zero yelling. People get frustrated, for sure. We raise our voices and emphasize points in an argument, but I will not tolerate yelling, swearing, or screaming because I have a 10-year-old daughter. She has only been around adults who are in control of their behavior. I had a father who frequently lost his temper, scared his children, and made everyone walk on eggshells when he was in a bad mood. I will not tolerate that in my household. As a single parent, when I am getting to know someone, I try to communicate this as kindly as possible. My hope is that someone who knows they have a temper, tends to lose their cool, or self-identifies as spicy, will realize that I am not the one for them, as I will not react the way they are used to. Story 32. If someone's hobby is collecting merchandise, I am not interested. I had to deal with too many obsessive people when I worked in retail who would harass employees for a specific Funko Pop, Hot Wheels, or Ninja Turtle. Even owning a Funko Pop is a red flag for me. Story 33. Precision and accuracy when stating information. When I ask you for the time, I prefer to hear 8:48 rather than approximately 9 o'clock. How much distance does the map show? Say 33 kilometers, not 35 kilometers. I had to ask a couple of people to be as specific as possible when I requested something. I know this is not common. I tried to be okay without that level of detail, but I couldn't. I really tried. I wish I could be. I am not proud of this. Story 34. If someone is vegan, I understand. I dated a person who was vegan, and it limited my eating choices significantly. I enjoy trying new foods and cooking for those I love very much. Story 35. Someone blind to others' perspectives basically perceives the world as one-dimensional, based only on what they have seen or experienced. They lack critical thinking and, as someone already mentioned, lack general curiosity about anything. Story 36. I have 3 issues that get intermingled: lack of transparency, being overly nosy, and lack of financial discipline. These 3 are all deal breakers but often become intertwined. I want to give full access at an appropriate stage in a relationship, not 3 months into my life. For example, if you need to log into my Instagram to find a recipe from 8 months ago, that's fine. Here's my password. That kind of thing in a reciprocal manner. At the same time, if I ever saw my significant other scrolling through my historical messages just snooping, that would be a deal breaker. My position is to be open and trust each other. I don't care what someone earns: $30,000, $80,000, $900,000. It just doesn't matter to me. But if you earn $80,000 and you drive an $80,000 vehicle, that's a deal breaker. If you earn $30,000 and drive a beater, save to buy a decent car, or take public transportation, that makes sense. I don't judge people who make poor financial decisions, but I have no interest in dating them either. Story 37. If they urinate in bed after drinking, cannot handle their alcohol, or are a mean drinker. One of the first things I asked my current significant other was if he ever urinates in bed after drinking, and I would have definitely ended the relationship if he did. I was not willing to deal with it again if it could be avoided. Story 38. I broke up with a man who would not tell me that I am pretty. He wanted to see me every day, would message constantly, wanted to talk about our future, but could not say the words, "I think you were pretty." No. Story 39. Low libido. I just cannot deal with that, so I am upfront about my sexual needs right away. It is difficult having a partner who is not in the mood all the time. I have been there and done that. Story 40. Being a picky eater, I am very adventurous and can count on one hand the foods I will not eat. I do not mind if my friends are picky, although it sometimes limits restaurant choices. Otherwise, it does not affect me. However, my partner and I cannot avoid certain types of restaurants or avoid making dishes with onions or other texture issues that would limit what I can cook for us. I just cannot do it. Story 41. I do not like country music. Sorry to be a snob, but I hate it and would be a miserable partner if I had to hear it every day. Story 42. An open relationship. I talked to my therapist about a man I fell for who wants an open relationship. Although I am not a jealous person, it absolutely hurts me when I see him flirting with someone else. He is not even my boyfriend. Ridiculous. My therapist guided me in the right direction, asking if an open relationship aligns with my core values. It does not. With this understanding, it has been easier to cope every day with these feelings toward him. Story 43. I have experienced a lot in my life. I do not like men who take advantage of others by using them for money or personal gain when they see someone doing well and want to be like them. They find ways to bring you down. Not only that, they only need you whenever it is convenient for them. Story 44. Someone who argues and shouts. I will not be in the same room as someone shouting and arguing unless it is interesting. Story 45. I will not date anyone who only tells their friends about the negatives of our relationship. It is exhausting having to deal with a girlfriend and all of her girlfriends giving you grief about stories that usually lack key context. It creates a terrible dynamic of her friends hating you, you hating her friends, and her hating you for hating her friends. Story 46. Being unaccepting of any of my personal beliefs or trying to convince me otherwise. Not wanting to help carry things or open a door for someone when their arms are full. Story 47. People who are very affectionate while texting, but when you meet in person, they cannot even stand holding hands. Story 48. Not sure if this is considered a deal breaker, but if you mention breaking up in any way, even during a heated argument, you mean it and that's it. Of course, this was communicated from the start of the relationship. Story 49. Anyone who tells me I should fight for them usually does so after they have done something wrong. Why won't you fight for us? Boo-hoo, I was not going to swallow. Story 50. Only watches reality television shows and consumes a large amount of mass culture. I do not care if you like reality television and want to catch a few new episodes twice weekly. Some of those shows certainly have their merits. But if the only thing you are watching and consuming is social media, reality television, and other mindless content without thinking critically about what you are consuming, I cannot be with you. Story 51. If they tell me to be quiet or any variation of that, I am out. If they try to control whether I can masturbate, I will not accept it. Story 52. Maintain contact with an ex only if there is a legitimate reason to do so. Otherwise, the contact should be completely cut off. Story 53. For the long term, he must vote. I believe it is our civic duty as Americans, and I will not accept any excuses. Story 54. As a man who has no female friends at all, consider what behaviors might be causing women to avoid forming friendships with you. Story 55. Close to family. I do not want to hang out with your family. I do not even want to hang out with my own family. I love that my husband never wants to see family. Story 56. An inability to pronounce words correctly and no real drive to figure out those tricky things. Examples: specific, passive, debut, debut, espresso, espresso, hyperbole, hyperbole. Story 57. I'm married now, so it's irrelevant, but when I was dating, I had a really bad experience with a guy who was a fan of Japanese animation. He made it seem like he was just a casual fan, but that was not the truth. It was the root of many problems in that short-lived relationship to a degree I never knew was possible. After that, I decided to avoid guys who watch Japanese animation. I'm sorry to offend anyone. I'm sure you're lovely. Story 58. If you cannot agree with me, it will not work out. If I say, we should kidnap and kill the sun to stop sunburns, and your first response is, it is literally impossible to kill the sun. Plus, we need it to live and grow food. It will never work out because you do not have enough imagination to keep up with me. Obviously, it is impossible. Have some fun in your life. Story 59. Septum piercing. Sorry, I can only see a bull when I see that. I cannot take another partner with depression unless that person is actively managing it. I cannot handle another toxic partner moping around the house while refusing to see a doctor or counselor, eat right, or take care of themselves. Story 60. Anal scratching and sniffing. I can tolerate it for a while, but when there is blood, I have to draw the line and say I cannot see you anymore. It is too sore the next day. Story 61. I have been tested, and it is medically documented that I have a phobia of large breasts. I have no clue how it developed, but it is a real condition. Story 62. Smoking, vaping, and chewing tobacco. I can't get it out of my head that I am basically swabbing an ashtray with my tongue. Blah. Story 63. I have no desire to be in any kind of relationship with someone who is on the opposite side of the political spectrum. The same applies to anyone who is religious. Story 64. Cannot be named John. I have known too many, and none of them have been good people in my life. I do not know how I attract all the worst Johns. Story 65. When I was single, I could not date anyone who had the same name as my brother or a certain unisex name that an ex-friend of mine had. Story 66. Vegan or vegetarian. Does not drink socially, nap, fly, travel, or road trip. Does not read. Does not have long-term friends. Friends are not healthy or supportive of one another. Does not have healthy boundaries with their parents. Story 67. Excessive cosmetic modifications such as facial procedures, breast augmentation, and lip fillers can make you look unnatural. I would not recommend them. Story 68. Anyone on TikTok. It is not limited to romantic partners, friends, colleagues, neighbors. It is some next-level arrogance to film yourself doing anything and then post it on the internet for random people to watch. It is unbelievable. If anything, body cameras on police officers and their location should be live-streamed and publicly accessible at all times. Story 69. Has too many guy friends, acts like one of the guys, drinks like an uncle, smokes cigarettes or vape juice, is into crystals, sage, tarot cards, horoscopes, New Age religion, is too jealous, has long sharp nails, unnatural hair color, no goals or any nose piercings. Any one of these and I respectfully decline. Story 70. In no particular order, just want sex. Many people have called me cute or beautiful and expressed interest in hooking up with no interest in me as a person. The fact that there are sexually transmitted infections and these people do not practice safe sex scares me. To my knowledge, there are 4 sexually transmitted infections that have no cure. Additionally, I identify as demisexual and demiromantic. Bad hygiene or unsanitary habits. Smoking. I used to tolerate it, but my last ex would justify smoking indoors. I found tar outlines on the fridge after pulling off my magnets. Yuck. No intellectual curiosity or willingness to try new things. I need intellectual conversations or I lose interest quickly. No religious people. I have no interest in involving that in my personal life. Controlling behavior. I will leave because I support autonomy and compromise, not domination. Refusal to communicate and discuss problems. My view on a relationship is that we are in this together and need to communicate to have a healthy relationship. Rude to service staff or others. I walk away. When they do not like animals or nature, hard no for me. If they are friends with any of my ex-partners. I do not need that drama in my romantic life, and I am done dealing with abusive partners. When they do not hold themselves accountable for their actions. Dislikes video games, anime, manga, comics, reading, and most nerd or geek-based interests. We are not going to work out. Believes any task or skill is an exclusive gender-specific role. Is a pedophile. I have zero tolerance for that behavior. Story 71. People who rub their eyes once a foreign object has entered the eye. People who do not have a nail scrub brush. People who do not tip housekeeping. People who do not know how to lift and carry 50 pounds. Attempted murder. Story 72. Dentures. There is just something about them that grosses me out. I'm also concerned about bad breath, so I guess I have a preference. Story 73. I really cannot date anyone allergic to peanut butter. I have many food sensitivities, and when I dated someone with a peanut allergy, it was very difficult. It is obviously selfish, but I cannot have milk, most sugars, and I am randomly sensitive to corn. I need my peanut butter. Story 74. I have stopped seeing 3 people because they do not like popcorn. I may eat it once every 2 months at home, but it is one of my favorite things. Story 75. Not having and refusing to acquire competence in stop the bleed and basic trauma skills until first responders arrive. Story 76. I feel like it should not be, but a lot of people are shocked. I only date within my religion because I am heavily involved in it and want whoever I spend a lot of my time with, intending to find a relationship for the rest of my life, to be on a similar level. I have no objection to others dating outside of their religions. It is just not for me or any relationship I find myself in. Story 77. When someone arrives late while driving, and especially if they get frustrated or defensive when I remind them of the upcoming turn as the navigator. This can be a deal breaker with friends. Not that I will stop being friends with them, but I will stop riding with them and volunteer to drive instead. Story 78. Those Browning buck and doe tattoos. My female best friend put me in the friend zone years ago. Anytime I was not in a relationship, I would always leave the door open for her if she ever decided to give it a try. She waited until the eve of her son's wedding, where I am the best man, to let me know she was ready. I said nothing. Then at the reception the next evening, she came to my table and mentioned it again, this time with her oldest daughter cheering her on. I looked at her and her son, grinned, and basically turned her down while mentioning that he knows what is going on. I did not even know she had one until I randomly mentioned how I felt about them one day. She looked like she died inside as soon as I said it. It hurt to find this out, but waiting until your other options are running out to finally say yes is a move I do not have time for at my age. Story 79. If they demand that you vote for their preferred candidate, I would never force someone to vote as I wanted as a condition of maintaining a relationship. I respect an individual's right to vote. Story 80. Calling me out of my name in a derogatory way. I don't care if you are mad or stressed. Unless you are calling me a term of endearment like baby, honey, or sweetie, don't call me out of my name. The first time you hit me with that B word, I am out. Story 81. Smoking or vaping, honestly. I've dated a few smokers in the past, and it is like making out with an ashtray. Story 82. When they immediately start assuming that we are now sharing everything without asking since we are in a relationship, especially if they start referring to things as ours when they were mine before we got together, it feels like they are dismissing my individuality or taking credit for something they did not do. I am fairly generous and I share a lot without being asked, but I do not like the expectation or the assumption. The ours thing feels uncomfortable to me unless we actively acquired or decided on something as a couple. Story 83. Someone who does not return their shopping cart to the store or the corral. I do not know, but it bothers me enough. It is on par with being mean to waitstaff. Story 84. Do you believe we landed on the moon? A no will result in an empty seat within moments. No further conversation is needed. Story 85. Any of that ridiculous misogynistic Archie Bunker humor. Even if it is all in good fun, it is insulting, rude, and dismissive. Goodbye. Story 86. Hypocrisy is the worst thing you can be, in my opinion. I will support you through anything, but if you go on a rant about hating when people do certain things or judging them for it, believe that I am going to hold you accountable if you do what you are judging others for. You do not get a pass. Story 87. Someone who cannot put their phone away is rude to the person they are with and shows an incredible lack of self-awareness. Emergencies aside, nothing on the phone can be that important. Also, someone who lets their animal, in this case a dog, bite you several times and does not apologize for it. Story 88. Too much silly energy. Like, oh, I'm just a playful person. Just a silly person. It immediately tells me they are hiding something bad. And I have never been wrong. Story 89. I have two reasons. First, I cannot date anyone named Caitlin or any variation of that name because it is my sister's name. That would be very strange for me. Second, if she is addicted to staring at her phone, I will leave. You all know the type who plugs it in to charge when the battery is dead and then unplugs it at 9% because they cannot just leave it alone. Story 90. If you are extremely secretive about your relationship with one or both of your parents, if you do not have a job and your parents financially provide for your interests and hobbies, when we are dating but you are afraid of getting in trouble, which is why you do not tell your parents about me or the fact that you are romantically involved with someone. When I explain that because of my mental stability I take medication, and you say just do not stop taking them, despite you yourself being mentally ill and unemployed. Story 91. You put new food into a container when it already comes in a perfectly good and often superior dispenser. Soy sauce and black pepper are prime examples. Story 92. I don't like loud chewers. I'm not saying loud chewers are bad people. I just can't relate to super loud chewers. If everything sounds like slurping soup, we are probably not compatible. Story 93. If you believe in any unsupported claims, even as simple as astrology, I do not want that behavior in my life. Story 94. I cannot be with someone who chews with their mouth open. It is like nails on a chalkboard and makes me want to vomit. Story 95. Being too short. I am 2 meters, approximately 6 feet 6 inches, and any girl under 1.70 meters, approximately 5 feet 6 inches, feels like having a relationship with a child. Story 96. When your girlfriend has a man who tags along with her, ruining any fun the two of you could have. Story 97. His mother has to be black. He can be mixed, but his mother must be black. He cannot listen to Joseph Rogan, and he cannot be a contrarian. Story 98. Love bombing or attempts to provoke jealousy. Immediate expectations without asking or caring about what you want, specifically involving material or superficial things. Later, superficial or transactional attempts at emotional intimacy, such as saying, I love you all the time for the validation of hearing it back without actually meaning it. Even if you are getting along well in other areas, if there is no deeper connection, something is wrong. Story 99. People who use the word irregardless and think it is fine. Then what does regardless mean? Story 100. Telling me to leave them alone or to give them space. I understand if you need time to yourself, but if I am a bother for you to be around, then I would rather not bother you at all. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.